Alright, so this is actually the start of your module number 3. As you can see in my screen or yung nakashare na screen dyan, we will now talk about how to create a sequential data files, or we will also learn how to use the comma separated values, yung CSV na tinatawag natin. So, ito, yung nakikita ninyo, nandito na tayo sa part ng discussion natin, the last four. Yan, the last four bullets in your module. We will try to use and create sequential data files, learn about random access files. We will also try to write and read those records inside that. So whenever creating and using sequential data files, tinatawag natin, you want to save more than a single string of file. So ito yung sinasabi ko. Uh, Later on kasi magpapakita ko sa inyo ng example ng program in which can now perform input operation at the same time i-output natin yung in-input directly doon sa data.txt na meron tayo. So for example, you have a data file of personal records that include an ID number, name and pay rate for each employee in your organization. So using the buffer writer method na ginamit natin previously, ito rin yung gagamitin natin sa ngayon. So we have here a close method, flush, pero this time, I will now introduce a new method which is a new line. It will now try to write a line separator. Meaning, yung parang imagine yun sa system.out.print line natin, yung print line natin. We are now trying to add a new line doon sa buffered writing or doon sa buffered writer method natin. So, gamitin natin ulit or gawa tayo ulit ng panibagong Java program using my NetBeans. Okay. Let's now try to create and use sequential data. And this time, we will now try to write, okay? Write something. Now, before that, uh, gagawa ako ng panibagong text file sa desktop ko. And this time, I will name that as employee. Employee.txt. For now, employee lang. So, the employee.txt file doesn't contain anything for now. So, wala siyang laman kahit isang value or any string. So, we will now try to create a program that will prompt the user to enter an employee number, enter the pay rate, and at the same time, enter the ID number. And we'll now try to write those details na i-enter natin directly to the employee file. So, kung mapapansin nyo, paunti-unti natin ginagawa ng maayos yung gusto nating mangyari dito. We are now trying to manipulate files, try to add something inside those files na create natin. So let's create a new Java path class, Java class. Class name will be write employee file. Okay. Write employee file. So this time, meron tayong java.nio.file. Do not forget to import the following ha. Java.io since gagamit tayo ng input. Tapos yung import static natin. Static java.nio.file that's standard open option. Okay. And lastly, for asking the user's input, let's use util, the scanner. Kasi ito yung pinaka-maiksi and pinaka-madali sa ngayon. So, public static void main string args and something like that. So, I will use the scanner. I don't know if you can still remember this, pero kung gusto niyo mag-ask ng user input, ganyan ang gagawin natin, di ba? So, we are now declaring the scanner object. Yan, using the input variable. Okay. So, this time, gawa tayo ng path file is equal to paths.get. Ano nga ba yung URI or URL na ilalagay natin dito? It's actually the same with the dito. Pero this time, employee.txt. Hindi siya data.txt kasi we are now trying to write something inside the employee file. So, Imagine this is a database file, yung employee.txt natin. And inside the employee.txt will now contain everything na ilalagay natin. Okay? So, meron kang employee.txt dyan. Let's create a variable s which will now contain the value of everything. For now, empty string object muna. And a delimiter. Okay? This time, yung delimiter kasi, comma. Lagyan natin siya ng comma. And let's declare an integer variable ID. Diyan natin i-store yung ID number. The name of the employee. The pay rate, for example. Yan. And a final integer variable quit na kapag ka naglagay tayo kasi ng number na 999, okay, it will now end the program. So, ano lang yan, kumbaga final declaration ng variable na to. Okay? So, let's try to create a try catch method. Try catch exception E. Then I can just simply print here the value of E, which is the exception. Okay. So, doon tayo sa try natin. Now, inside the try method, mag-output tayo. Output stream. Output is equal to new buffered output. Ito kasi dapat memorize din. Output stream files that new output stream. And this time, file, then create. Just like what we did earlier dun sa previous natin. Diba? Kagaya nitong, ito. Same siya. So, output stream, output is equal to new buffered output stream, files that new output stream. Okay. Tama. So, that contains the file, which is employee.txt. Now, we have here the buffered writer, and let's name that as writer. It's equal to new buffered writer, new output stream writer. And this time, ilalagay natin dyan yung output. Ayan. So, we have here an output stream, okay, named output, together with a writer. Ang ira-write kasi natin dito is yung output natin later on, na manggagaling from the input from the scanner. Okay? So, let's try to create or print a message system.out.print. Enter employee ID number. Ayan. So, yung employee ID number natin, ilalagay natin yan dito sa ID na variable. ID is equal to input.nextInt. I hope natatandaan nyo pa kung paano to. Ayan. So, naglagay tayo, di ba? Kapag ka-run kasi natin to, and it will only ask you to add an employee ID number, which is, there you go. Now, what we will now try to do here is actually to add an employee number, to add a name, and to add a pay rate, and at the same time, ilalagay natin lahat ng yun, itong mga values na to, directly dito later on sa employees.txt. Okay? I hope nakakasunod pa tayo. So, after this, gamitin na natin to agad. Now, once na tinype ni user 999, for example, ibig sabihin, mag-quit na yung buong program natin. It will automatically close the program. So, in order for us to do that, we have here a while. Okay? While the ID is not equals to quit. So, ibig sabihin yan, for as long as the employee ID number is not equal to 999, the program will continue executing dito sa loob na to. Otherwise, the writer will now close. Itong writer na to. Pero kino-close na natin, hindi pa nga natin in-open, di ba? Mamaya, i-open natin yan dito sa loob na to. Okay? So, inside here is system.out.println, tapos enter name for employee number, kung ano yung nilagay mo kanina. Ayan. So, kung ano yung nilagay mo kanina. System.out.println, employee, plus ID. Ayan. Oops, kulang. Okay. And we will now try to place that input that next line. Okay. Dito natin yan ilalagay sa name. Equals input. Okay. So, nilagay natin siya dito sa name. Kanina, nilagay natin yung value ng employee ID number dito sa ID. And we only use next in. This time, since we are actually asking for the name of the employee, we tried to add the name or the value of the name of the employee directly to the string variable name. Dito na. Okay? Next. After nyan, gawa tayo ulit ng panibagong system.out.println. This time, we'll now ask the user to input the pay rate. Ang pay rate natin dito is in double. Enter pay rate. So, the pay rate is equal to input that next double. Okay. Now, ito na yung part na ilalagay na natin yung mga values na to sa employees.text. Okay. So, I want you guys to listen carefully. So, this time, using the S, ito, the S variable, as for now, wala pa siyang laman, di ba? Using this S variable, we will now place the value of the ID plus the delimiter. Okay? Ano yung delimiter? Comma. Plus the name plus another delimiter, yung comma, plus pay rate. So, ibig sabihin yan, kung titignan natin maigi, lahat yan naka-string. Everything will be converted into string. And, yan, magiging ganito ang itsura niyan. Say, for example, yung ID number natin na nilagay is 100, followed by a comma, tapos pangalan, Jezreel, followed by another comma, and the pay rate, which is, for example, 100.00. So, ganyan na magiging itsura niyan. And it will now become a single string variable. Okay? So, nilagay natin siya sa S variable. Next, we will now try to write that write. Okay? Ano yung ilalagay natin? Yung S natin together with the 0 and s.length. Okay. Let me explain what happened there. Ano nga bang ibig sabihin ng write natin ito? Itong write method. Now, according to the slide and in your module's description for this one, we have here a buffered writer method which will now write the string from position of for length nito. And it contains the following parameters. Number 1, the string. Number 2 is the integer, the position. So it will always start from the position 0 and the length of the string na gusto mong ilagay. So the length of the string will now depend on the values of the S method. Okay? So yung ilalagay natin. Alam ko medyo nakakalito na to, pero if you will simply follow the step-by-step solution for this one, madali lang. Basta ma-gets natin yung mga to, kung kailan natin ilalagay itong output stream, buffered writer, and so on. Yan. So, we try to write them, and this time, i-write natin yung new line. Ano nga ba ulit ang new line? line separator. So, ibig sabihin, next line. So that every time na naglalagay ka ng panibagong employee ID number, automatic nag-a-append siya dun sa employees.txt natin. Okay, so, create tayo dito ng panibagong print line. Tapos, enter next ID number or yung value ng quit to quit. Okay. Tapos, lagyan natin siya dito as input.next in. Okay. Anong ibig sabihin ng code na to? So, this time, itong part na to will now ask the user to input another ID number. Okay? Now, for as long as in-input niyang ID number is not equal to 999, lahat ito mauulit ng paulit-ulit. Pero, once the user tried to input 999, it will now automatically close the writer. So, ganun siya. Diba? Actually, maganda na tong code na to kapag ako ang tatanungin kasi automatic niya nang maisusulat sa employees.txt. So, initially, yan, employees.txt doesn't contain anything. Walang kalaman-laman ni isa. Okay? So, let's try to run this code. Ayan. Pakita ko sa inyo yung output. Employee ID number. So, for example, 100. Enter name for employee number 100. So, for example, Jezreel Ian. Enter the pay rate. Gagawin kong pay rate dyan is around 75.75. Enter. Okay. Enter the next ID number or 999 to quit. Now, for example, I would like to press 999. Ayan. Nothing happens. But then, if you tried to open the employees.txt, ipakita ko sa inyo ha. Nasaan yan? Ayan. I will now share my screen. Oops, hindi yung data.txt. Yung employees.txt dapat. Okay. Let me share the employees.txt. Bakit yung data.txt kasi nagpapakita? Employees, ayan. Now, tignan nyo maigi yung employees.txt natin. So, based from the input that we had earlier, yan, ewan ko lang kung nakikita nyo, yan, diba, I tried entering an employee number 100 with my name and with the pay rate, 75.75. Automatic, naglagay yan, nagpakita yan doon sa employee.txt natin. Now, instead of me trying to close, what if I will add another employee number? So, close natin ito. Kumbaga, maglagay tayo ng ilang employee ID number. So, meron tayo employee ID number 1. Ito si Jezreel. Pay rate niya 10. Another ID number 2. Pangalan niya is Ian. And ang pay rate niya is 15. Another ID number which is 3. Tapos ito is Manuel, for example. Ang pay rate niya is 30. And this time, I will now quit. Okay. Tingnan natin kung nag-append or nagpakita sa employees.txt lahat yon. So, let me share my screen again sa employees.txt. Yan. Magically speaking, lahat ng in-enter natin, nagpakita na doon. Diba? Magic. Diba? We can actually say that this program works properly. Kasi every time na naglalagay tayo ng, yun nga, ng employee ID number, yan. So, we have added 1 with a name Jezreel and with a pay rate of 10. Tapos, after that, naglagay tayo ng 2, which is, yung 2 natin is yung second employee number natin with a name of Ian with a pay rate of 15. And we added another ID number 3 with a name of Manuel and with a pay rate of 30. So, kung napansin nyo, every time na naglalagay tayo ng panibagong ID number na hindi 999, automatic, magpapakita siya sa employee.txt natin. So, that's actually how powerful using output stream method and at the same time, the buffered writer natin na tinatawag. So that's only the first example ha. So I hope na nakukuha niyo yung gist ng topic natin. So again, we are this example here showed how to write something directly sa employee file. By the way, kasi pwede nyo naman siyang I mean, nasa module naman lahat ng example ito. Itong mga ginawa kong code na to, lahat to nakalagay naman sa module. So all you have to do is to simply re-encode everything and to understand everything again. Okay. So the next Java program na ipapakita ko sa inyo is how you will now try to read something from a file na create natin. So ito, we tried to write the values. This time, we will now try to read something. Okay. So babasahin na natin. Yung kanina, ano yung binasa natin? We tried to read something, pero read line lang, di ba? Iisang line lang. Pero this time, let's try to at least create a new program that will try to read everything. So, create tayo ng panibagong path class. And this time, read employee file. Okay. So, inside the read employee file are the following. We have here import java.nio.file .asterisk. Okay. Import java.io. This time, wala tayong mga static import kasi hindi naman tayo magra-write. We will simply read something. So, public static void main string args. And using the same path file earlier, ito, yun yung gamitin natin. Let's try to place them inside S. Okay. And try catch method. Do not forget that. Exception E. System.out.println E. Okay. Now, inside the try method is where we will now try to read the input. Input stream input. New buffered input stream. Files, capital F. That new input stream file. Okay. Perfect. And buffered reader. We will now try to read the file. Is equal to new buffered reader new input stream reader. Ano yung babasahin natin? Yung input na manggagaling dito, which now contains the employees.txt. Okay. So, same lang dun sa readfile.java natin na ginawa kanina. And this time, we will now place the variable s. Diyan natin ilalagay lahat ng binasa natin. Read line. Okay. Now, for as long as the s is not equals to null, meaning, for as long as nagbabasa siya ng something dun sa file na may laman, what will happen? We will always try to print, okay, the value of s and will continue reading the value from the employee.txt file mismo. And do not forget to close that. Okay. Reader.close. So, ganyan siya. Napakasimpleng program. Ang gagawin lang, babasahin lang natin yung employee.txt. Right now, we all know that the value of employee.txt are the values we entered from this output earlier, yung 1, 2, 3 na employee number. Now, let's try to run that. And let's try to see kung ano nakalagay. Look. So, successfully, we were able to read, okay, the values inside the employees.txt and try to print them directly sa console. So, kung ano yung nakalagay dun sa employees.txt natin, ganun na ganun yung nakalagay dito. And just simply using the readline method, Etong read line na to, di ba sabi ko kanina, itong read line, ito lang nababasa, isang line. Pero since we added here a while method in which will try to read everything inside the text file, and for as long as the text file does contain anything, it will continue to read. Diba? Kanina kasi wala ito nung dito sa readfile.java natin. So, ang binabasa lang dito is simply the first line, but not the entire the entire the entire file or the entire thing na nandun sa loob ng employee.txt. This time, using this while method here, we are reading everything. Kaya kung napansin nyo, when we tried to output the value of S individually, ayan yung nangyari. Na-print yan. So, lahat ng nakalagay dito sa employees.txt will now be printed out directly. Okay? So, yun yung kagandahan yan. Yun yung kagandahan yan. Okay. So, this time, magkaroon tayo dito ng panibagong employee.txt. Pero let's try to add something more. And let's try to read, okay, the values here in employee.txt. Pero maglalagay tayo ng panibagong mga variables. Papakita ko sa inyo kung ano ibig kong sabihin diyan. So, let's create another another Java class. Pero this time, read employee file 2. Enhanced version to ng read employee file. Okay? Enhanced version. So, same process. Import java.io ganyan. Public static void main string args and that one. Okay. So, using this path file na meron tayo, copy that. Gamitin ulit natin yan. And this time, let's create an array. String array is equal to new string 3. So, the value of the array will now be 3. So, ganito siya. Mangyayari array 0 and array 1 and so array 2. And each arrays will now contain something later on. Ano nga ba yung mga yan? So, gawa tayo ulit dito ng string s, which is a null, a string delimiter, which is a comma. Okay? Parang yung ginawa rin natin kanina. Int id, and string name, double pay rate. Parang yung ginawa nga lang natin. Pero this time, we have gross, since magko-compute na tayo ng something. And final double R's in week is equal to 40. And the total equals to 0. Yan. So, prepare ko lang yung mga variables natin. At this time, the try catch. Exception E. System.out.println E. Okay. And inside here, we have the input stream, yung parang kanina. Input stream input is equal to new buffered input stream files.new input stream file. Okay. Same lang nung kanina. And the buffered reader is equal to new buffered reader. Okay, input. So, let's try to print here a blank print line. So, automatic magpiprint muna tayo ng blank print line. And we'll now try to read what's inside the S sa reader, which is itong employee.txt natin. So, sa loob niyan, gamitin natin yung kanina. While S is not equal to null, sabihin, for as long as merong laman yung S natin or yung yung text file natin, ano ilalagay natin? This time, inside the array, ilagay natin yung value ng split natin. Or ano nga ba ang ibig sabihin ulit ng split? For those of you who doesn't know, s.split. Yan. Meaning we are now trying to split. Okay? We are now trying to split the values of the array using a specific delimiter. Ang delimiter kasi natin dito is yung comma delimiter. So, ibig sabihin, nilalagay natin sa loob ng array yung value ng S natin, pero this time, walang comma. Okay, nagets nyo yun? So, wala siyang comma. So, the value of the ID will now be integer that parse in array 0. Yan, automatic yung array 0 lagi ang value. Tama, kasi this will be the array 0, array 1, array 2. And this time, since we are trying to split, tatanggalin natin yung comma. Okay. Next is the value of name, which will now be placed inside the array 1. And the value of the pay rate will now be placed parse double inside array 2. Okay. And this time, since meron tayong gross na variable, I added here a computation of the gross, which is the pay rate multiplied by the hours in week, which is actually 40. Diba? So, ito. Print natin ngayon. Print natin ngayon dito sa, dito sa console. ID, the ID number plus the ID plus tab, which is actually us trying to add a tab dito para magmukha siyang table form, plus the name, plus another tab, plus yung dollar sign pala dito. Ayan. Dollar sign, pay rate, plus another tab, and gross. Okay. So, ang ginawa ko lang dito para magmukha siyang table form, para pantay-pantay yung distance ng ID number, and so on. ID number, name, pay rate. Okay. And the total value will now be added to the value of gross. Okay. And s.reader, s is equal to reader.readline. Okay. Tama naman. And this time, now if the value of the employee.text doesn't contain anything, saka natin siya i-close. Okay. So, try natin i-review yung code natin. Ang ginawa natin dito sa part na to is we actually try to remove the comma nitong mga to, and we try to put the values of the ID in array 01, the name in array 0 in array 1, and the pay rate value in array 2. Pero this time, naglagay kasi tayo dito ng panibagong variable, which is the gross, which has now a computation of your pay rate multiplied by the hours in the week. And the gross will be added directly dito sa system.out.println natin. And s.reader.readline, meaning binasa ulit natin to. Pero this time, meron na siyang delimiter, which is the comma. So let's try to run that. And there you go. Kung napansin natin, ang itsura ngayon ng code natin was actually based from the values of the ID 1, 2, 3 na nilagay natin kanina with Jezreel Ian Manuel as its name, with the values of the pay rate, yan 10, 15, 30. Pero this time, merong gross. Yung gross natin, or, yan, paano lumabas ang 400? 10 multiply the hours in the week, which is, hours in the week is 40. 15 times 40, 30 times 40. Kaya siya naging, yan, mga ganyan. So, kung napansin natin, we simply tried to read the values of employees.text from this one, ito kasi yung mga CSV, kaya nga CSV, comma, separated values. Diba? From here, we tried to enhance the reading of employees.text into a tabular form. Ngayon, ang mangyayari kasi dito, later on, kapag gagamit na tayo ng database, every time you are trying to add something directly in your database system, yan, so pag naglalagay ka na ng values sa database system mo, each values now will be placed directly into the database file na gagawin natin. So, in this case, employee.text. Diba? So, siguro sa futures natin, magkakaroon ng ibang file name kung saan nyo i-store yung value ng database files ninyo. And every time na naglalagay kayo ng values doon sa database file ninyo, you will now try to read each values properly using the steps na pinakita ko sa inyo, which is this one. I know medyo nakakalito siya ngayon, pero if you try to create or recreate this program, anyways, nakalagay naman siya sa module para hindi kayo mahirapan. And pagka ni-recreate nyo yan, you will have a better understanding on how CSV files are working. Especially itong read and writing natin na ginawa. So for today. Okay? So I want you guys to be very familiar with this kasi maglalagay din ako ng panibagong activity regarding dito. Ayan. So, tignan natin yung module number 3 natin. By the way, meron tayong meron tayong activity dito sa module number 3 sa pinaka-end. Ayan. So, we have here a written work 3, identification, and this time, program tracing. Ayan. So, you have here a program tracing, a new activity na nilagay ko which is considered as performance task. So, you have an employee.text and using this Java code here, yan, you will try to identify what will be the output of this one and this one. Ganun lang. Pero, meron kang employee.text. So, the file will now be different. And the file will now be different. And, I mean, the path file will now be different. Depende kung saan nyo siya isa-save. Okay, medyo mahaba pala itong discussion ko ngayon. Inabot tayo ng more than 1 hour. Yan, so I guess na-upload ko naman na to dun sa ano natin. Yan, do you have any questions so far? I think wala naman tayong question, no? Kasi nakakalito yung discussion natin today. Medyo madami, pero kaya ko nga nilagay lahat ng ano natin, lahat ng kailangang file directly sa module para at least mas maintindihan nyo. Okay, so sino ba yung mga nandito na hindi ko na-checkan ng attendance?